My wife went on a spiritual retreat to Bali with her yoga instructor. When she returned, she avoided eye contact. One day, her suitcase tipped over. Inside was a love letter written in broken English. At dinner, I casually slid it across the table and said, "So, was it enlightening?" She dropped her fork as I pulled out my own ticket to Bali, with a surprise of my own. So I, 41 male, was married to my wife Sarah, 38 female, for 12 years. We met in college in Portland, moved to Seattle after graduation, bought a home in Ballard, and slowly built our lives together. We had the usual ups and downs, but I thought we were solid. We have 2 kids, both under 10. I work in IT, remote mostly, so I'm around the house a lot. She's been a stay-at-home mom since our youngest was born, but over the past couple of years, she started getting really into yoga. Like obsessed. She found this yoga studio near Green Lake and started going 4-5 times a week. I didn't mind. I figured everyone needs an outlet. I encouraged it. She seemed happier, lighter, more herself. That's where she met Daniel, her yoga instructor. I met him once at some yoga and wine night they hosted. He was weird. One of those guys who always smiles, but you can't tell if it's real. Long hair in a bun, string bracelets on both wrists, called everyone sister or brother, you know the type. I didn't love him, but I didn't think much about it. Then one night, she comes home and tells me about this yoga retreat in Bali. Says it's a once-in-a-lifetime spiritual journey, and how Daniel would be leading it. My gut twisted right away. I didn't like the idea. I didn't like that she'd be halfway across the world with him for 10 days. But I didn't say no. She was so excited. So I said okay. I stayed home with the kids. Took time off work. Held it down. And the whole time she was gone, she barely texted. Maybe once every couple days. And even then, it was just stuff like, hope the kids are good, or Wi-Fi bad. I'd ask about her day, and she'd send one-word answers or nothing at all. When she got back, I picked her up from SeaTac. She gave me a quick hug, barely looked me in the eye. Said she was tired, the flights were long, she just wanted to shower and sleep. Fine. But the days after? She was different. She walked around like her mind was still somewhere else. She started waking up before everyone, going for solo walks every morning. She wasn't talking much. Barely touched her food. She stopped asking about the kids' school stuff. No affection. Not even a, "How was your day?" from me. Something was off. Then about a week later, I was in our room folding laundry. She'd left her suitcase by the closet, still half unpacked. I moved it to vacuum, and it tipped over. Some clothes spilled out, and a small folded envelope fell with them. I picked it up. Thought maybe it was something for customs or a receipt. It wasn't. It was a letter. A love letter. Written in rough, broken English. Here's the first few lines, word for word. I never knowing love like this before. You show me peace and fire same time. Your body is temple and I pray every night I holding you. It kept going. Talking about their secret moments under stars, about how she belong in Bali, and how he waits for her next return. My stomach turned to concrete. I sat down on the bed. Just stared at the paper for maybe 20 minutes. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't even cry. My brain just shut off. When she came home later that evening, I didn't say anything at first. I made dinner like normal. Set the table. We sat down. Halfway through, I reached into my pocket and slid the letter across to her. No words. She looked at it. Opened it. Froze. Then I said, "So, was it enlightening?" She dropped her fork. Didn't say a word for maybe a full minute. Her eyes got all glossy, but no tears came out. I could see her breathing change. Her hands started shaking. I waited. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry." That was it. That's all she said. I didn't yell. Didn't throw anything. I just stood up and walked out to the back porch. Next morning, I told her I needed space. I packed a bag and went to stay at my brother's place in Bellingham for a few days. Told the kids I had work stuff. While I was gone, I thought hard about everything. The signs. The timing. The way she changed. I remembered how she would spend late nights on the patio journaling. How she changed her phone password in April. All the little red flags I ignored. Here's the part one haven't told her yet. While I was at my brother's, I booked a ticket to Bali. But I'm not going alone. I found Daniel's Instagram. Went down the rabbit hole. Turns out he has a wife. Her name's Noelle. She lives in Bend, Oregon. Owns a little shop that sells crystals and handmade soaps. I found her page. Sent a message. It took her a few days to respond. At first, she didn't believe me. So I sent her a photo of the letter. She asked if I could call. We talked for 2 hours. She broke down crying. She told me they've had problems for years. That he always talked about finding truth through connection. That he once cheated with someone from a retreat in Thailand. We started planning. Our tickets are booked. Same dates. Same retreat. Daniel doesn't know we're coming. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. Part of me wants to confront them both in front of the whole damn class. Part of me wants to just watch, collect everything I need, and then hit her with the truth once I get back. But here's what I do know. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. So yeah, the flight to Bali was long. 17 hours if you count the layover in Taipei. I didn't sleep. Just stared out the window and kept running through everything I wanted to say. Rehearsing it in my head like it was some courtroom speech. Noelle sat next to me. We barely spoke on the flight. Not because we were mad, just, I think we were both trying to keep it together. When we landed, It was late evening. Humid. That thick, tropical air that sticks to your skin. We took a taxi to Ubud and checked into a small hotel a few minutes away from the yoga barn. That night, we sat on the balcony, shared a drink, and talked. Noel told me Daniel had started journaling in Sanskrit. Not because he knew the language, but because he felt spiritually guided. I told her Sarah once asked if we should try a conscious celibacy week to reset our connection. I laughed. She didn't. The next morning, we went to the retreat center. We didn't go in right away. Just watched from the cafe across the road. It didn't take long. Around 8 a.m., I saw Sarah walk into the main building, same flowing white yoga pants, same hair tied up in a lazy bun. She looked lighter again. Happy. Free. Daniel followed behind her. Shirtless. Tan like he lived on the beach. That same damn beaded necklace around his neck. Like nothing had happened. Like he didn't rip two families apart. Noelle gripped her coffee cup like it was a weapon. We waited until the first session started, then slipped in quietly. It wasn't hard. No one checks anything. It's Bali. Everyone assumes you're chill. They were doing some partner stretch thing. And yep, Sarah and Daniel were paired. Laughing. Him touching her lower back. Her leaning into him. I felt sick. Then he looked up. And saw me. His whole face changed. Eyes widened. Smile dropped. He stumbled back like he'd seen a ghost. Sarah turned to see what he was looking at, and when her eyes met mine, she just froze. She didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Just stared at me like her soul left her body. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, next to Noelle, arms crossed. The room went dead quiet. Someone whispered, "What's going on?" Daniel stepped forward. "Mark, man, this isn't the place," and I snapped. I said, loud and clear, "You mean like Bali wasn't the place to sleep with my wife?" Sarah gasped. Someone in the back dropped a water bottle. Daniel tried to say something, but Noelle cut him off. She stepped forward, held up her phone, and said, "You lied to me. You said you were here to find truth. Instead, you made it your cheating playground." Then she turned and walked out. I followed. We didn't say much that afternoon. We just sat at the beach for a while, watching the waves. I thought maybe that would be it. But then, that night, I got a message from Sarah. Just 4 words. "Please talk to me." I didn't answer. Next morning, I went for a walk alone near the monkey forest, trying to think. That's when things got weird. Some guy approached me. Early 30s. Tan, long braid, big tattoo of some chakra symbol on his arm. "You're Mark, right?" he asked. I nodded slowly. He said, "Daniel wants to meet. Privately." I laughed. "Of course he does. Not to fight," the guy added. "He says he owes you something." I almost said no, but something told me to go. Maybe I needed to hear what kind of garbage excuse he'd offer. Or maybe I just wanted to look him in the face and see if he'd flinch. So I went. We met near a rice terrace just outside of town. He was sitting under some hut, legs crossed like a monk. I stood. He started with, "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." I said nothing. "I didn't plan for this," he continued. "She came to Bali empty, broken. I helped her heal." "You helped her cheat," I snapped. He nodded. "That too." Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "She told me you'd never understand her. That she felt dead in your home. That she cried in secret for years." I stared at him. "And you just believed her?" He smirked. "No, I listened. That's all she needed." I walked away. I could have hit him, but what would it change? When I got back to the hotel, Sarah was waiting in the lobby. She looked rough. No makeup, red eyes, like she hadn't slept. She stood when she saw me and said, "Please, just hear me out." So I sat. She started talking fast, like she had to get it out before I walked away. "He made me feel seen," she said. "I know that sounds stupid, but at home, everything felt like a list. Lunches, dishes, bedtime. I stopped being a person. I just became mom." She took a breath. "I'm not excusing it. I'm not. But it wasn't just about sex. It was like I remembered who I was." I said, "So you couldn't remember that without blowing up our family?" She cried. Right there in the middle of the hotel. I didn't comfort her. She reached for my hand. I pulled it back. "I just need to know," I said. "If you were planning to tell me. Ever." She didn't answer. That silence said everything. So now here I am. Still in Bali. Noelle flew home. I extended my stay. Not sure why. Maybe to breathe. Maybe to think. Maybe because I don't want to walk back into our house and see her toothbrush next to mine. Maybe I'm just trying to figure out who I am without her. There's one more thing though. This morning, I got an email. From Daniel. No words. Just a photo. Of Sarah. Lying on a hammock. Smiling at him. And now I don't know if I've lost my wife. Or if I ever really knew her at all. So, that email with the photo? I stared at it for hours. It wasn't just a picture of Sarah lying on a hammock. It was the timestamp. It was taken 2 days ago. After I confronted them. After she cried in front of me. After she said she wanted to find her way back to us. After she swore that what happened with Daniel was over. And there she was. In his hammock. In his world. Still smiling at him. Not like she was caught. Not guilty. Not torn. Just smiling. Happy. Like the 2 kids waiting for her in Seattle didn't exist. Like I never existed. I didn't respond to Daniel's email. I didn't need to. But I did something else. I took a walk. Back to the retreat center. There's this open lounge area where guests leave handwritten messages on little notes. Stuff like, "Today I felt peace," or "I found my truth." I left one too. Just 5 words. He cheats on everyone. Ask around. Then I walked away. The next day, I got a message from a woman named Anna. She said she was at the retreat too. Saw my note. Asked if we could talk. We met at a small cafe in town. She looked nervous, clutching a journal against her chest. She said, "You're not the first. You probably won't be the last." Turns out Daniel has a pattern. He targets the ones who come to Bali feeling broken. Divorces, recent deaths, midlife crises, lonely moms. He sleeps with them under the excuse of sacred intimacy. Anna had a friend, Jessica, who came on a retreat the year before. Fell for Daniel. Had an affair. Left her husband and moved to Bali to be with him. 3 months later, he ghosted her. Vanished. She found out he'd moved on to another guest. Jessica ended up flying back home, broke and humiliated. Now here's the twist. Anna didn't come to Bali for healing. She came for revenge. Jessica was her sister. And she wasn't the only one. Turns out there's a whole online group of women who were lied to, manipulated, and discarded by Daniel. Some of them are trying to take legal action. Hard to do when it's across borders and all consensual. But the stories are all the same. Same promises. Same charm. Same, "you're my goddess" routine. I asked Anna why she reached out to me. She said, "Because if your wife's still with him, she's not just with a cheater. She's with a predator." That hit different. Because I'd been angry, betrayed, furious. But I hadn't thought of Sarah as a victim. Now I wasn't so sure. I asked Anna for proof. She showed me screenshots, DMs, pictures, one video of him giving some healing touch demonstration that crossed so many lines it made my skin crawl. I asked if she'd talked to Sarah. She said, only if she wants to hear the truth. And I wasn't sure if she did. So that night, I sent Sarah a message. Short and cold. "You're not his first. Ask Anna." No response. Next day, I saw her again, accidentally. I was walking through a small marketplace near Campuhan Ridge, and she was there, alone, buying some kind of tea. She saw me, froze, then walked straight up to me. "You're digging?" she asked. I said no. I just stopped ignoring the truth. She shook her head. "You're trying to make him a monster so you don't have to look at yourself." I laughed. "No. I'm trying to stop my wife from throwing her entire life away for a guy who's running a one-man cult." That shut her up for a second. But then she said something I wasn't ready for. "I'm pregnant." Everything stopped. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, for her to laugh and say she was kidding. But her face was stone. Then she added, "I don't know whose it is." My legs almost gave out. I turned, walked away, didn't say a thing. Couldn't. I went straight back to the hotel and started packing. But I didn't book a flight. I needed time. A plan. I don't know what I'm going to do. DNA test? Divorce? Lawyers? I don't know if I should fight for her or run for my life. I don't know if she's brainwashed or just gone. All I know is, I didn't come to Bali looking for answers. But I found a war. And it's just getting started. I didn't sleep after she told me. Pregnant. Doesn't know whose it is. That sentence just kept repeating in my head, like a bad song stuck on loop. I walked around the streets of Ubud until the sun came up. Watched roosters run across the road. Listened to scooters buzz past. I kept thinking, this is how my life ends. Not in some car crash or illness, but in a slow-motion collapse under palm trees and incense smoke. And then I snapped. I texted her, "Meet me at the yoga barn. Noon. Bring him. No more hiding. No more slow conversations in corners." I booked a private room at the center, one of their meditation domes. Paid extra to reserve it. At 12:03 p.m., Sarah walked in. Daniel followed. Neither of them looked like they wanted to be there. I was already seated, arms crossed. I didn't offer a hello. I just said, "Let's get this done." Sarah sat. Daniel stood. "You told him?" Daniel asked her, voice low. She nodded. I took out the letter. The one from her suitcase. Placed it on the mat in front of us. "I found this 2 weeks ago," I said. This was the beginning. Then I pulled out my phone and played a voice note Anna had sent me the night before. It was Jessica, and a sister, describing her own affair with Daniel. How he promised her a new life in Bali. How he stopped answering her calls once someone younger showed up. Daniel tried to laugh. "You're really collecting ex-girlfriends now?" I stood up. "This isn't about exes. It's about a pattern. You pretend to heal people so you can break them." Sarah looked down. She didn't speak. Daniel stepped forward. "You think your marriage was fine?" "It wasn't. You were already losing her. I just helped her see it." "You manipulated her," I said. "You made her feel special, then you slept with her. That's not spiritual. That's just predatory." His smile disappeared. Sarah finally whispered, "Stop." Both of us turned to her. Tears were running down her cheeks. "I made my choices," she said. "Stop blaming each other like I didn't have a say." She looked at me. "I wanted to feel alive again," she said. "And he gave me that. I'm sorry, but I chose it." Then she turned to Daniel. "But I also wanted a future. And I see now you never meant that. You just float from one broken person to the next." Daniel stepped back. Looked like he was about to speak, but nothing came out. He left. Didn't slam the door. Didn't argue. Just left. It was just me and Sarah now. She broke down. Collapsed onto the mat, sobbing. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said. "I thought it was just a phase. I thought I'd come back and everything would be fine." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just asked, What now? She shook her head. I don't know. We sat in silence for a long time. Eventually, she whispered, if the baby's his, I'll raise it alone. I won't ask you to stay. I nodded. We walked out separately. The aftermath, when I got back to the hotel, Noelle was waiting in the lobby. She looked at me and asked, did it go how you wanted? I said no, but it went how it needed to. She gave me a quiet nod, then hugged me. A long, slow, no words hug. I didn't know how much I needed it until that moment. She flew back to Oregon the next day. I stayed another week. During that time, Sarah and I didn't speak. We were both still in Bali, both walking the same streets, but we were miles apart. I booked a paternity test for when we got back. That was non-negotiable. When I finally returned to Seattle, the kids were with my sister. First thing I did was hug them for 10 full minutes. Sarah came home 3 days later. She didn't say much. We coexisted, ate separately, slept in different rooms. 2 weeks later, the test results came. The baby was mine. That changed something. Not everything, but something. We started therapy. Not couples therapy, just individual. We needed to untangle our own knots before we even looked at the rope between us. She said she'd stop going to the studio. Said she was done with yoga, at least for now. That part of her life was over. I'm still in the house. For the kids. For now. I don't know what we are. Partners, co-parents, something in between. I still feel the betrayal like a bruise that won't fade. Some mornings I look at her and feel nothing but resentment. Other days, I catch a glimpse of the woman I married. I'm not sure which version is real. But here's what I do know. I'm not the same man who dropped her off at the airport. I used to think love meant always forgiving, always pushing through. Now I think love means respect, for yourself and for the other person. And when that respect dies, everything else dies with it. I'm still deciding if I want to rebuild. But this time, it won't be out of fear or habit. It'll be because both of us finally know who the hell we are.